Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very accomplished branding and advertising guru from Gurgaon, India, Navkiran Brar. Navkiran, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Excited to be here.
Thank you. Navkiran is the founder of Estoot, an ad agency specializing in video content creation for brands. She earlier had founded Off-Roads India, which is a travel company. So, Navkiran, before I ask you about Estoot, tell me a little bit about your own journey in brief.
Yeah. So I actually, I come from a finance background. I sort of grew up in the US. I went to school and college in the US, and then I worked in consulting at KPMG in New York City. And sort of bored of my job, wanted to do something different, and that's when I moved back to India, and I
Mm,
started my first company, which is Off-Road, as you mentioned,
mm.
and then I started Estoot in 2017.
Amazing. So, what is the story behind the unusual name Estoot? And I'm sure you've been asked this question many times.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's actually a playful twist on the word astute. It's pronounced astute.
Ah, okay.
So Astute,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
means
yeah, yeah.
witty. So I actually wanted something. I wanted a word that didn't really mean anything for
Ah,
SEO reasons. I thought it'll rank higher in Google if I come up with a word that doesn't mean anything,
mm,
but also means something. And I like, I'm a very visual person, so I like the idea of having two O's in the logo
mm.
because there's a lot of creative potential. Actually, in my office right here, we have a doodle where we have the O's sort of high fiving each other. So,
Wonderful.
yeah.
Wonderful. And what inspired you to specialize in video advertisement for digital platforms and not be a full service agency?
So I actually did start as a it started as a full marketing agency, but going back to my previous starter, which was
Hmm,
off roads, while I was doing that, I realized that I really like the marketing side of it a lot more. We planned a couple of trips, two very interesting trips. One was a holy trip to Vrindavan, one was Ladakh, and I thought it'd be cool to bring a videographer along to just sort of capture, the essence of the trips. And while I was doing that, I sat with the editors, made those videos, and I kind of fell in love with the process of filmmaking. I really enjoyed that bit. So when I started Estoot as a social media marketing agency, of course, I gravitated towards video, and then the industry also changed in a way where video became extremely important. So it was sort of a natural progression.
hmm.
But now, I think 99% of the work we do is in video.
Amazing. So my next question, Navkiran, is what are based on all the work that you are doing, what are some of the common mistakes a lot of brands make in their video advertising efforts, and how
Yeah.
can they avoid them?
Yeah, so there's quite a few very glaring mistakes that brands make.
Hmm,
One is not adding a call to action. I think that's a big blunder. You put in so much effort into creating a film or creating an ad, and then not putting a call to action, not telling your audience what they should be doing.
hmm.
In my opinion, is absolutely
Correct.
wrong.
Correct.
Second is making your videos too long. I think
Hmm,
today, in today's day and age, the attention spans are so small. Nobody wants to watch long videos, but brands sometimes still feel that they want to, throw in everything they
hmm,
possibly can in a
hmm,
video.
hmm,
And the third one, I would say, is not optimizing for phones and for mobiles, because most of the content is consumed on the phone these days.
correct.
So not optimizing for mobile is extremely wrong, because if you're showing a video in landscape format, it doesn't really work well on the phone. So you have to sort of make sure that when your audience is watching it, it's in a portrait format or a square format, depending on the platform.
Very interesting. And over the years, you said you started in 2017. What are some of the key trends and changes you have noticed in digital advertising over the years?
Yeah, I think the biggest one, as we all know, is AI now.
Absolutely.
That's been a game changer. I mean, it's and we've embraced it. We,
Hmm,
from ChatGPT to Runway to Midjourney, we use all of it. I think it's
hmm.
become a good ally for us.
Okay.
AI is huge. The shift from TV to digital, I think that's been pretty big, and that sort of happened during COVID.
Hmm,
Uh, Brands used to spend a lot more money on TV advertising. With that, I think 90% of that ad spend has shifted to digital now. Um, and short form video, which again goes hand in hand with that. So in the era of TikTok and Insta Reels, so that kind of content is a lot bigger now than it used to
Hmm.
be.
Hmm. And can you tell our viewers and listeners some of your successful campaigns that you have worked on and what made them stand out?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a few actually. I'll tell you one of the ones that my personal favorite is something
Hmm.
we did for Mamaearth. Mamaearth is one of our major brands that we do a lot of advertising work for.
Hmm.
So for 2 years ago they got into the makeup category. They started as a baby brand and got into personal space, and 2 years ago they got into makeup.
Hmm.
So one of the first big campaigns we did for the makeup category was for foundations. Um, and within 2 days of running the ad, they had to actually stop the ad because their product was completely sold out.
Hmm.
And that ad is still running. It's been 2 years. There, we made so many different variations of that. It's still going strong.
Hmm. Amazing, amazing. My next question, Navkiran, is that and I've seen advertising for the last 4 decades
Yeah.
from my ITC days. There is always a tussle between creativity and the objectives of the client's campaigns. How do you balance this?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think that's a constant struggle. Uh,
Hmm.
but I feel creativity is thrives under constraints,
Hmm.
um, and especially advertising. I feel it's part art, part science. The art part is how do you grab somebody's attention, and that's where my creatives put our heads together and we figure out how do you get people to actually see the ad. But the science part is how do you get them, how do you drive action. Somebody sees the ad, how do you get them to actually make that purchase or download the app or whatever it is that you want them to
Hmm.
do. And it's a formula. I mean, when we make ads, it's very clear what are we going to put in the first 5 seconds, what do we want people to do in the next 5 seconds and the next 5 seconds. So it's great to have those sort of constraints, because then the creativity also stays within limits. It
Hmm.
doesn't
Hmm.
go everywhere. So yeah.
Fascinating, fascinating. And how do you ensure a video aligns with the values of the brand and the messaging?
Yeah. So, most of I would say a lot of the brands we work with, whether it's a Mamaearth or a Dabur, they're very clear on what their branding is. They know what they stand for. They know what their target market is. So it's easier there when they know that these are the people we're selling to.
Hmm.
But sometimes with some of the smaller brands, they're unsure of who they want to sell to. So sometimes it's a lot of working with the brands and figuring out and making sure that whatever branding they have, whatever the kind of people they want them to represent, we're casting a certain way where the look and feel of the film should sort of reflect what the product looks like. The fonts that we use, the colors, everything sort of comes together to make sure when somebody sees an ad, they should be able to tell that it's from that particular brand.
Right. Very interesting. And storytelling obviously is very important in any communication on video. But given the fact that the entire video now length is less than a minute on so many
Yeah.
of these micro platforms,
Yeah.
what do you do to ensure that the message or the story is going across in such a short span of time?
Yeah, so again, the storytelling, like you said, it's extremely important. It's the backbone of advertising, and it sort of humanizes the brand.
Mm.
And the creative bit of an ad is so important. I think in one of the reports by Nielsen, they talk about how 49% of an impact of a brand comes through the creative.
Mm.
So the story has to come from a real consumer insight. If somebody, for example, we've done this ad for Dabur where they were selling a conditioner and they were speaking to an audience in tier 3, tier 4 cities
Mm.
where people don't use conditioners. They don't know what a conditioner is. So now if I make an ad and I start telling them that your conditioner is not good enough, here's a better one, they're not going to understand that.
Mm.
You have to tell them that your shampoo is not good enough, start using a conditioner.
Mm.
So that those insights are extremely important.
Mm.
Once you get those consumer insights, you build a story around that, and yeah, then that's the only way to get your audience to listen to you.
Mm. Mm. Okay. You spoke a few minutes ago about a call to action. My question is, what goes into creating a compelling call to action in a video ad?
Yeah, I think number one thing is clarity. You need to know what is the action you want the consumer to drive. It can't be, you can't tell them to download an app, sign up for a newsletter, and buy something at the same time.
Mm,
There needs to be one very, very clear. You have to be clear in that.
mm, mm,
And in advertising, we do there's brand awareness ads, which are purely done for you're not the brand's not looking to make sales out of that. Then there's
mm,
performance marketing ads where you want them to purchase.
mm,
So that clarity has to be there from a brand, from an agency perspective, and that's the only way the viewer will be clear on what the call to
right,
action is.
right.
And creating urgency, I think, is great. Telling people that only 2 days left on this discount, so that always compels people to act a little faster. So
Mhm,
that's always a good thing. And testing, there's a lot of testing we do in CTAs. So if we make an ad, sometimes we'll have different openings, different CTAs.
mm.
One could say download the app, the other one could say buy now, and we test that quite a bit, and then based on that, we see what's working better for that particular audience.
Okay. And now my next question, Navkiran, is on data and analytics.
Yeah.
And data and analytics have always been important for marketing or branding, but it's become even more important today. So my question is, what role does data and analytics play in optimizing the performance of a digital video ad?
Yeah, like you said, data's always been important. The exciting thing is nowadays it's become a lot easier to measure
Hmm.
the data. In TV ads, it was a lot more difficult. With online, with digital ads, there's a lot of testing that can be done. Like I mentioned just now, there's a lot of iterations of an ad you can do. You can do different openings. If I want to sell a shampoo, I can do a product ad. I can do a testimonial ad. I can do a storytelling ad, and I can test all three and see what's resonating most with the audience. Same thing with CTA. Same thing with bringing the messages, the key messages. Sometimes one key message is put at 3 seconds or at six
Hmm.
seconds, and then
Hmm.
you put it later and see what's performing better. And whatever analytics you get, whatever data you get, the next batch of ads you make for the same brand, you have that much information. How to adapt. And again, going back to your creativity question, based on that data, we can change our creativity accordingly.
Hmm. And how would you measure success of an ad on a digital platform? And what are some of the key metrics that you would track?
Yeah. So, we are a purely content agency. So most of all the metrics are measured either by the brand themselves or they have performance marketing agencies. But some of the metrics that the brands look at is, of course, conversion rate is the biggest one. How many
Hmm.
people bought something after seeing your ad
Hmm.
or downloaded something. CTR is good, click-through rate, which is how many people actually clicked on the ad after watching it. View through rate, how many people actually watched the ad after seeing it. So there's a few metrics like that, but these are some of the important ones.
Hmm. There's that old David Ogilvy line, which says that only 50% of advertising works, but nobody knows which 50%.
Yeah.
Right. So I
Yeah.
was like, I keep wondering, when you look at digital platforms
Yeah.
and someone says the 0.01% CTR is fantastic, and I say, well, that seems a little strange. Out of 1,000 people, one person looks at it, but maybe these are great numbers. Uh, Moving on, Navkiran, my next question is on ethics. And it's been an age-old discussion on how important is it to handle ethics when it comes to advertising. But my question is, what are some of the ethical considerations involved in producing digital content for brands? Because now it's going out to the whole world.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think again depends on the industry you're working with. There's different considerations.
Mm,
We work a lot in the personal care beauty space. So one of the this is something that always comes up is when we're casting for models, the skin color and things like that. And we try our best, and luckily all the brands we work with are very much on board with this as well.
mm,
We try to be very inclusive of, if we're making an ad for the Indian audience, we make sure we
mm,
represent somebody from the Northeast,
mm,
the darker skin tone, lighter skin tone, everything. So, and going back to the foundation ad I mentioned, we actually had 7 models models in it, and we made sure each model had a different skin tone and different parts of India. So it's very representative, very inclusive. That's and again, like I said, this is something that we've been lucky that the brands we work with have been very on board with this. And yeah, I think on a personal level, the one ethical consideration we face is that we work with a lot of competitive brands, and we're privy to a lot of confidential information about upcoming launches and whatnot. So just making sure, having that clear distinction that all our ads for different brands are very different from each other. So we're very cognizant of that.
Very well said. What you're saying is that you have the little Chinese wall between different competing brands in your own organization. Fantastic. So now can I have time for two more questions? My next question is, what's your vision for the future of Estoot and its role in the marketing and branding landscape?
Yeah, the vision is to continue doing great work. We've been very lucky to have really good clients, really good work that has come our way, to continue to do that, and entering new markets and new industries. We do a lot of work in Bombay as well, so maybe setting up an office there. Also in talks with a lot of agencies abroad, some in Europe and US. I think one benefit we have being in India is that the cost of production is much lower, and there's no reason we shouldn't be delivering the same quality of work from here. So yeah, there's a lot of it's an exciting time to be in this industry. So looking forward to doing much more work here.
Fantastic. And my last question for you, what's the one piece of advice or lesson you would give to brands looking to create compelling and effective video ads for digital platforms? And this is other than come to Astute and start an account with us.
Yeah. I think the one piece of advice is to just start. Having video advertising is not a choice anymore. It's the need of the hour. Everyone needs to do it. A lot of times I'm speaking to brands, and it takes them a while to sort of take that first step, but it's important to take that step because every platform is pushing video. You just have to do it. If you're selling anything online, you have to make videos.
Very interesting. Navkiran, on that note, thank you so much for speaking to me about your journey. Thank you for speaking to me about Astute. I just love the name. Now that you have unraveled the mystery behind the spelling of the name, I love the fact that you told me you'd like the two O's in the name. Thank you also for speaking to me about so many different aspects of digital marketing and digital advertising. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me again.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.